Hello, I'm Robert, and fact checker and science blogger, and I help people scared various things for Doomsday Debunked on Facebook. And this time, it's people who are scared of young kids who say that Jesus is about to return. And this is one of them. This is a very young kid, 7 years old, and she's going to be 8 on March the 14th. And she says, in a very sincere way, she says that she hears Jesus talking to her. And especially if you're autistic, maybe one thing autistic people are very good at sometimes is picking up on sincerity and whether people are telling the truth or not. So you listen to Mila, and she's with such a very sincere voice. She talks about how she has heard Jesus speaking, and she says that she knows it's Jesus because he says her name, Mila, 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 very going quieter and quieter, and for some reason she thinks that means it's Jesus. But I mean, I just said that, so anyone can say a voice like that, so it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just she's got this idea that someone who speaks like that, and she speaks like that when she imitates him. So it doesn't actually mean anything. She's just a young kid. She doesn't know anything, and but she thinks that because she hears a voice like that, that means it's Jesus. And then she says that, and then you've got to remember she's a very young kid, only 7, and at that age, kids don't really distinguish between the stories they make up and real life. They have a very blurred distinction between the two. Like, you may remember when you were very young and you believed in Santa Claus. And that was just a kind of story, and you were sort of taking part in a story, but you didn't really distinguish and say, oh, that doesn't make sense. How could Santa Claus come down the chimney? We don't even have a chimney pot. We don't even have a chimney. How is he going to get in and put the presents on the Christmas tree or whatever? How is he going to fill the socks? And you just don't think about things like that. So if you remember back to when you were very young, then you may vaguely remember being like that, where you're much less critical and not really the same distinction between things that are real and things that are imaginary, and stories, and just things that people tell you as stories, and things that are real. And we still have that as adults. You talk about getting lost in a book, and you read a book, and then you're just off in that world of that book. And it's not a hallucination. So if you read, say, The Lord of the Rings or something, then you're not hallucinating being in that world. You're just immersed in it. And in that sense, then very young kids, they're like that quite a bit, that they're just immersed in their worlds, and they don't make such a strong distinction. And then, sadly, she belongs to a religious family, and her family are encouraging her in this way of talking, and so it's very common to have what they call imaginary friends. So here's someone with an imaginary friend, and he tells his parent there's a friend called Mackie, and that Mackie lives in another house, and then the parents say, well, can we go and visit him? And say no, because Mackie has a shark in a cage, but it's a friendly shark, but you can't go and visit him because of the shark in the cage in his house. So he's made up this story, and there's no real shark in a cage, and just because his child says one, so he'll say that very sincerely as well. He believes it. Another kid, Katie, talking about a young Fred Carlos, who's the same name as her. And let's just look at this. If I just play that, then turn the volume.
Hey, Katie. Who is Carlos?
He's my best friend and he's my brother.
Okay. Carlos, where's Carlos at right now?
He's right beside me.
Right.
Yeah? So she thinks that Carlos is just there right beside her. There's nothing there. So she's involved in this story, and that's just like Mila thinking she's talking to Jesus. There's no difference really. And if you're in a religious family, then it's quite natural to start talking to Jesus, just as other people would make in other families. Your young kid might be laying out a tea set for the teddy bears and pouring them out tea. And so it's much the same thing. It can be a real teddy bear, it can be totally invisible, and there's nothing you can see there, just laying out, making tea for nobody, apparently. But in their world, they're doing it for someone. And so it's very common. A lot of young children do have these imaginary friends. And so it's very like that. And so then Mila has had Jesus talking to her, so she thinks. But if it weren't for her parents kind of encouraging her and kind of saying, "Oh, look, you know what, he's told you that, so therefore it's true," sort of thing, then it probably wouldn't have spilled so much into the real world like this. But Jesus told her that her autistic brother is going to speak for the first time on her birthday, March the 14th, I think. I've said March 24th, I think it's March the 14th. I can fix that if it's wrong. And that Jesus, and then apparently before that, she said that Jesus told her that everyone will be going to heaven in 2020, not in March, just 2020. And if her autistic brother is sort of beginning to talk, then he may already be using single words. He may be pointing at something and say car, and he has some idea what a car is. And then next would be like sort of red car or toy car or whatever. He could start qualifying it. And so he may well be at some point where he's already doing some kind of thing. And then when it comes to the 14th, with all this building up of hope that he's going to talk, and then he says car in a slightly different way or something, and they may well upload a video. So if they upload a video of her autistic brother saying car or something, say, "Oh, he can now talk," then he's probably been saying that all along. It's just a very, very slight change that only they've noticed. So if they do upload a thing of him apparently speaking, then it doesn't mean anything. In terms of it doesn't mean she's a prophet. Or maybe it was 24th, I'll double check it. And so, and then in 2019, she told her parents that Jesus will take everyone to heaven and something to do with 2020. And she asked her parents what that meant. They said that means it's next year. So we're talking about someone who is very young. People have different stages at which they learn the dates, and some people might be rather precocious and learn the years and the months very early. And she's not obviously not particularly precocious, and she isn't very clear about the orders of the years, and that she doesn't know that 2020 comes after 2019, and she's probably not very clear about the months either. And so an awful lot of that is just building up of what the parents' expectations, and they can kind of cue her. She might have been saying to 20 something. They say, "You mean 2020?" And she says, "Oh, 2020," And then they say, "Oh, 2020 is the next year." And then she remembers that as her telling them 2020. I mean, it could be an awful lot of cueing and stuff like cueing her up to things going on there as well, kind of coaching her without consciously doing it, but they very much want her. So her parents from these families, they very much want Jesus to return very quickly, and they believe that they're going to all go up to heaven, and they've probably been brought up by their parents saying the same thing when they were kids. And then in these families of these people like that, they don't seem to mind that nothing happens. So it's very much a kind of constant hope. Keep saying, my shoelaces are undone, so Jesus is going to return tomorrow or something. It's usually not quite as absurd as that, but they don't need any excuse or none to think that this means Jesus is going to return. And then they're constantly hoping, and then when nothing happens, they just start hoping on another day, and another day. So they live their life constantly hoping and believing that Jesus is going to return on such and such a date, and then such and such a date, and the next one, and the next one. And so if you go and look at these videos online, on YouTube, you very often get loads and loads of comments saying, oh, you know, how wonderful it is, and sort of giving Christian expressions of joy that Jesus is going to return, and you thank you, brother, for sister, whatever, for your ministry, for saying Jesus is going to return. And these people have probably been through that maybe a dozen times so far this year, the more keen ones. They just don't seem to mind, they just go on to the next one. So it's a different tradition from what we have here in the UK where I live, where people just never do this at all. They're just not interested. In the UK, I have never in UK amongst Christians come across anyone suggesting a date for the future. And if you go and look at the Amazon in the UK, then if you look at the Amazon in the US, then there's whole bookshelves about the Jesus' second coming. Go and look at Amazon in the UK, and there are none. There isn't a separate section for it. It's eschatology. There's that section in, I think it's eschatology in the Amazon site, and it's just not there in the UK. So you certainly don't have to be preoccupied with this at all to be Christian. Most people I was brought up as a Christian. My two parents were missionaries, and question about whether Jesus would return and when, just not something we gave any thought to. It's something that you think about happening sometime in indefinite future, could be 1 billion years from now. Nobody really minds, just don't think about it. So then if you go to the Bible, then the Bible says nobody knows, not even Jesus. No one knows the day or hour. The angels in heaven don't know. The Son himself doesn't know, only the Father knows. That's in Mark. And then the Son himself doesn't know, and it's copied over into Matthew. And so that's standard belief on this. And so, since Jesus doesn't know, how could Jesus tell her? Now, if you're a bit more historical about it, then you look at this and you see the Bible as a historical document that's developed over a period of time. So I'm not saying you should do this, but it is a way that some Christians think about it, in which if you go back, so the more theologians more than the everyday people, but theologians, the Bishop of Durham, for instance, in the UK, then they have much more, the idea that it's not that every word in the Bible is exactly how it happened, as it happened, but rather that something very inspiring happened, and that was Jesus' life. And we don't even know, we don't have any independent evidence. The Romans never put anything about Jesus in the histories. There were loads and loads of different religious figures at the time of Jesus, and he was just one of many, and the Romans didn't even notice him. Not in their histories, at least not in the ones that survived to us. Of course, they had many histories that didn't survive. But of what survives to us today, then there's nothing about him. So there's nothing independent about Jesus. But we, just from the event that came after that, and the Bible, and the way people followed that, then people say that, if you take the historical point of view, something very inspiring happened back then. And what exactly it is maybe not word for word what happened in the Bible. And maybe the miracles didn't happen exactly as described. And maybe even the crucifixion didn't happen exactly as described. So this is something Bishop Durham says, which is very controversial. But some theologians think like that, and they still call themselves Christians. And they often take the Sermon of the Mount as being the central thing. And or some of the teachings about how you live the life now. And their belief is that really it's very much like, consider the lilies in the Bible, where you're very much involved in what you're doing now with this life, and this is what matters. And then the rest of it, then it's a very, the best we've got are the Bible and the Gospels, and it's a nice kind of story but I don't mean that in any kind of pejorative sense. Not mean it's anything wrong with it being a story, just in the sense that we can't say exactly what happened. So we might as well go with the story. Why not? Why not just believe the Bible story? Because we've got nothing else, and it's something very inspiring happened, and that inspiration went into the story. So you can just think of it like that, being a very inspiring story that you think has got some truth to it, and you don't know exactly what the truth is. So I'm not saying that it's absolutely fine to have a literal view of Christianity. I'm not saying not to do that. So if you take the literal view of Christianity, then this is exactly what happened, exactly what Jesus said. Jesus said, nobody knows the day or hour. The angels of heaven don't know, and the Son himself doesn't know, only the Father knows. So if you take that literal approach, then absolutely, then there's no way that Peter knows that Jesus couldn't have told him. And then if you take the inspiring story approach, then if something very inspiring is going to happen, you just don't get hung up in all this and what the second coming means. So second coming is just something very inspiring again, some idea of a future. The future is something very transforming, or it even can be something in the present, that the second coming is always there, and that Jesus has already returned and is there in your heart. So all these ideas are possible, and many more. And the four main different ways that theologians take it, I go into this in one of my other articles. Anyway, so you just don't need to worry about any of this. These children, they're like children with imaginary friends, and you get even tiny ones saying, Jesus is coming. And here's a very young child, born in 50 seconds.
Jesus is coming.
There you are. So they've just been brought up from a very, very young age, say, Jesus is coming. And that's their faith. And that's absolutely fine too. And for them it's something wonderful. It's constant hope. But if that's not your tradition, then absolutely you don't need to believe any of this. And so the children with imaginary friends, there's nothing wrong with having, just last little bit about the psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but it's what I found out about it. So first of all, so it doesn't mean it has to be Jesus, because she thinks it is. It's just, if she's made a good connection, her imaginary friend, hallucinations, whatever they are, will have some of the inspiration of Jesus. So some of the things that she's heard about the Bible and about Jesus will come into, and that's like the thing I was telling about the story of the Bible. And the stories that she tells will have some of that same inspiration as well. And so, in that sense, then you can think that she's made a good connection with Jesus through these stories. But if you're a parent, for instance, in your religious background, and you have a child who starts having these imaginary stories about Jesus, then I don't think, so the psychologists say it's not really good to go into their world and tell them what to imagine. But it is good to just play along with it. And so it says you shouldn't try to note down every word. Yeah, that's not the psychologist. But the psychologist down here a bit. It doesn't mean you should note down, that's me talking there. But there's a bit about the psychologist up here. Here we are. Let's see if I can find it. This is a story about someone with an imaginary monster in the back seat, which the 3-year-old must keep looking back. Eyebrows are raised high over her widening eyes, her mouth slightly open with awe. Clearly she's not seeing an empty passenger seat. He's looking at you, she warns, her voice barely above a whisper. Oh yeah, I say, keeping eyes on the road, the hair on my back and my neck standing on end. So Zeus is a monster. Got red feather and yellow polka dots. He has red eyes. He's a nice monster, she assures me. The blue ones are the mean ones. But Zeus is the least of my problems. It's Emily and Sophia that drive me up the imagining walls. Talking about the and then you could go and read about that. I'm sorry, I'm looking for a little bit. Oh yes, here we. I'm trying to find this little bit. Sorry, I can always pause this if I don't find it right away. Yeah, well, let's bring up this article here. Here it is. So, young children may imagine they hear or see things as part of a game, as a result of their worries and fears. Yet children often hear or see things that may scare or upset them. A winter night, a creak in the house, or a shadow on the wall may feel frightening, especially for younger children. And other times, they may imagine they hear or see things as part of a game or as a result of their worries and fears. They may even have an imaginary friend they want to sit next to a table and have conversations with. These examples are usually just part of the normal growth of a child. They can most often be managed with understanding and gestural reassurance on the part of parents. And hallucinations are when one's heard, seen or experienced something that is not there. And they can occur in any of our senses, and so sound, sight, touch, taste and smell. So yes, all of those. And so that again may become as part of normal development, or maybe a sign they're struggling with some type of emotional problem. And sometimes they're part of a psychiatric illness, such as psychosis, but psychotic disorders are not common in children. And when they do happen, they're serious and severely interfere. They often seem confused and agitated, disorganized speech, thinking, emotional reactions and behavior, and sometimes accompanied by hallucinations or delusions, fixed, false, even often bizarre belief. So those are the two things. But the thing like Mila, it's not likely psychotic. Hearing voices, seeing things not there, can be part of normal development. Or it can be severe emotional stress, physical illness, medication, psychiatric disorders, or non-psychotic illnesses. For instance, if they're depressed, and psychotic illnesses. So if you're worried about it, then talk to your child and find out what he is experiencing and what they're doing in every part of their life. And so if they have disordered thinking or behaviour, that's when you need them to be evaluated. But otherwise, this playing around and hearing voices, it's not something you need to worry about. Just part of the normal growth. So that was that. But there was another bit. Let's see if I can find the other one. Embracing imaginary friends. I think it might have been that one. I haven't so I've obviously left out some of these bits. So I meant to include. And there you are. I mean, that's a typical example of someone laying out meals for people out there. And you've got to talk about how the imaginary friends can actually be quite helpful there. Believe me, Emily and Sophia have their moments, but I think I'll miss them when they're gone. That's that one. You can have a read of that. It's quite fun. And I can't find this thing now, but anyway. So anyway, that's the, but that's the idea that actually it's good to take. It's this. Oh, that's it. It's this video. Yes, there was a video by a psychologist video. That's the one. These are kids.
You might tend to think of imagine.
Yeah, that's one, but it's quite long, 4 minutes. Do have a listen to that. And yes, she explains that that the imaginary friends are very common, and children with imaginary friends often are better at socialising and use more complex language, and they're better at understanding their emotions and those of others. And so you don't need to worry about these imaginary friends. It's very common. But they explain that actually, if you're taking part with the world of the imaginary friends, and it's perfectly okay to take part in the world, but don't start saying things like, "Oh, whatever, Mako, whatever it is, Mako has green hair or something," and try and tell them and try and make their world for them, but just to take part in it, and not try too much to try and mould this imaginary world. It's their world, and it's their time, and you can take part in it. But it's not so much kind of making it into something new for them to try and fit your ideas. So I think if the Mila thing has gone a little bit wrong, it might be the extent of the parents trying to mould their views of Jesus into her vision, and trying to coach her in her vision, because they're very malleable at that stage, and that's not so good, apparently. But just taking part in it, and if she's talking to Jesus, then sort of taking part in that, then that shouldn't be so, it's quite good, healthy probably. So but it doesn't mean she actually saw Jesus. So that's it. And oh yes, then I was going to talk about how Jews. And so I mean this. I'm just extrapolating here. I'm just suggesting I should put in a little bit more, make it clear when it's my voice talking. And I'm just suggesting to you that it may well be very healthy for these people. It doesn't seem anything. I'm not a psychologist though, but it doesn't seem too unhealthy really for young kids. But when you get these people, if they start having imaginary friends, and Jesus is one of them, but if it's like you start writing a book about the prophecies of your imaginary friends of your children, and that seems going a bit too far. And so there are people who do that. And then if you are someone who gets scared by any of this, then please don't be, because these kids don't know anything. They come across as so sincere, and just because they're young kids and they haven't got a clear distinction, they're sincere about Jesus in the same way that they're sincere about Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. And there's no evidence. If a kid comes running up to you excited saying, "Santa Claus has come and brought me presents this year, and look at what he's brought me," and you bring out all their things from the stocking, and they're absolutely sure that Santa Claus brought it to them, that is not evidence of Santa Claus. So, in the same way, whatever she says about Jesus, it's not evidence of Jesus having said anything to her. Of course, if you're Christian, you believe in Jesus, but you don't need to think that Jesus in person came and talked to your little kid just because she talks about him. So, and now this idea about prophesying all the time, I'm just going to bring that up, that there's a big warning in the Bible against prophesying for Christians, but there's not for Jews. So this chap, he is constantly prophesying that their Messiah is going to come. So of course, for a Jew, then the Messiah, Jesus it's like Jesus, but he hasn't come yet. So it's like the Jews were before Jesus. So if you hear the people talking about the Jewish Messiah, then it's not something dreadful at all, and it's not like a second coming. It's not an end of the world thing. For Jews, then Jesus coming, with the Messiah coming, is a new peaceful age. It's going to start, and in which literally there's not going to be even any predation between animals, if you take it literally what the Bible says. An end of all strife, all warfare, even people getting angry with each other, completely overhaul that into a new peaceful world. And that's what the Jews think is going to happen when the Messiah comes. And there's nothing in the Bible against prophesying the Messiah. And the Torah in some places actually encourages it, apparently. So you get these people like this chap, Rabbi, what's his name? Rabbi Chaim Kanivsky, or whatever you pronounce it, and he's constantly saying that their Messiah is about to come. And there's nothing wrong with that for a Jew. So he says there in the old Torah, the Jews are waiting for the arrival of their Messiah, which will mark, so this is by a Jewish rabbi, not some terrible end to the world, but on the contrary, the beginning of a new, beautiful era. But before that, terrible events may occur. They will occur. The Jews have two possibilities. They could have a peaceful Messiah, in which case there are no terrible events at all. Or they could have a Messiah who comes along, and in order to be established, then certain terrible things happen. Not kind of caused by him, but part of him enabling him to be there. And so they don't know which of those will happen. So there is a possibility, the beginning of a new peaceful, though before that terrible events, you should emphasize may there, because they don't know. And some think it will be completely peaceful. And so from that point of view, then the knowledge that some kind of cataclysm is coming into the world, even a positive reformatting of the world into something different, does not benefit man at all. Why build something today? There's no certainty that all this will remain safe tomorrow. So therefore God gives a person the feeling that the world as it is now is stable. That we can do something and build in life, and also give birth and raise children with a certain healthy degree of confidence in the future. That's how Jews think about it. But at the same time, we believe that the Messiah will ultimately come, because life is still not ideal, especially the life of the Jews as a whole, as a people. And in principle, a radical improvement is possible. Elimination of the threat from enemies is called within people. Restoration of a higher level of spirituality and wisdom in the Torah. And in this regard, our faith in the arrival of the Messiah represents the light at the end of a tunnel. It will be. There's something to hope for and strive for. So they're not saying it's going to happen now. So Jews have this idea of endless far in the future. No matter how desperate the situation seems to be in terms of problems listed, this is not a dead end. The Messiah will come. It can happen at any moment. To when exactly and how exactly things will be, we do not know. And so far, we continue to pursue our mission, life in this world, keeping the commandments and improving our character. So that's a Jewish way of looking at things. And so many conflicting views. Then you have these, and then here's some quotes about it. It's from Wikipedia, but they're generally pretty good on Jewish things. But then here are the quotes from Jewish prophecies. Of course, many will know this. That is from the Bible, so yes, Christians will know it as well. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift sword against nation, and they will no longer study warfare. That's Isaiah 2:4. Isaiah 11:6-9. The wolf will 6-9. The wolf will live with the lamb. Leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear. The young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child put his hand into the viper's nest. It will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters covers the sea. So that is what the Messiah will bring in. And the main reason the Jews don't think Jesus was the Messiah is because that didn't happen. So it's not a brief period of peace, and it's not a period of tribulation leading to peace. It's not a peace that goes on for a certain period of time and then stops. Just a peace going on and on for a long time. There's no warfare, no nations no longer fight. Wolf will lie down with the lamb. And Christians, rather bizarrely, hijack these prophecies and claim they're prophecies of war and rapture, which they're not. And then Rabbi Kanievsky said, when asked about the time of the Messiah's arrival, he said, the end of the sabbatical year. And he gave us the same answer each year. But then it should, and that was in September 12, 2015. It should be noted that it is considered a positive trait to always be anticipating the Messiah. And one of their great rabbis, great Torah sage, is told to have said that any time he heard a loud noise, he would say, perhaps the Messiah has arrived. And similar stories have been told of the leading Moroccan Kabbalist and another rabbi. Nothing happened, of course. So these are very like the rapture Christians. So you just hear, oh, perhaps the Messiah has arrived. That's how the Jews think. They hear, something falls down. Oh, perhaps the Messiah has arrived. So that is entirely appropriate if you're Jewish. And so if you consider it that way, then what these people do isn't so bad, really. It's so you get a lot of stick from other Christians who say, look, the Bible says that you shouldn't do this. And in a way it does. But on the other hand, there is this idea of constant hope. And if you're doing it as hope and not as a prophecy, then that's different. So there's a difference between, if you listen to Mila and you think, oh, Mila's a prophet and she's prophesying Jesus is going to come in 2020. Or if you listen to her and you just say, this idea of constant hope, like the hope of the Messiah of the Jews, then in that sense, I don't think it's particularly bad. It's actually positive. It's positive if you're in that tradition. Because you have this background, and especially you have this background of constantly doing this over and over, every time. You're always going and seeing all these signs, and it's like something's fallen down, you say, oh, perhaps the Messiah has arrived, and thinking, perhaps Jesus is coming tomorrow. Isn't that wonderful? So if you're doing it like that, then it's not negative for you. But the problem is it can be negative for other people, because if they haven't got that strong tradition. So that's why you have to look at each person's position as they are. So if someone comes to me for help and they're sort of saying, I haven't actually had this happen, because the people in this situation, they're not worried, so they're not going to be coming and seeing someone like me and saying, oh, I'm scared that the world's going to end, because they're not scared. So the people who come to me pretty much by definition are not one of these constantly hoping and happy people. They're generally pretty happy people, I think, the ones who are constantly hoping like this. So anyway, part of this is it's a foreign tradition to us in the UK, but I am told it's not always nice. There's some people who are brought up in this tradition in the Bible Belt, US, who are really terrified of Jesus' return. And so they're brought up in a different way. So Mila obviously was brought up very looking forward to it and happy. And so there's certainly a strong tradition of people who just think it's wonderful. But sometimes, so some people I help, they are really, really scared, and they've been brought up in the Bible tradition, but they've been told basically that everything they do is wrong and they risk going to hell, and Jesus might return at any moment, and that if so they might go to hell. Now if that's what you're thinking, then you will be quite scared. So that can't be what Jesus meant in the Bible. There's no way that's real Christianity. So there's something gone a bit wrong if you've been brought up like that. That something got miscommunicated at some point along the way, because Christianity is very joyful and it's very loving and kind, and then there's all the images of hell and the images of sin, but it's all about being picking yourself up when you've made mistakes, and it's all about forgiveness. So there's very constant love, constant kindness, constant forgiveness. That is what Christianity is about. And then when you have the hell and the sins and things, it's always associated with forgiveness for it all. And that everything can be forgiven. And some Christians, I was told some Calvinists think that everyone, no matter who, will end up in heaven. But whatever you think about what happens after you die, then certainly you do have the idea that nothing is too bad. And even in the Roman Catholic, even if you murdered someone, it's not good to murder someone, of course. It's absolutely awful if you've done that. But if you then have the forgiveness for that, if you then have the regret and the confessing and the recognizing that what you did wasn't right, and then you're asking for forgiveness, you make amends as much as you can, then you have love of Jesus comes. And that is partly, from a Christian point of view, and like Amnesty International, my mother, who was Christian, was quite a bit involved in Amnesty International, and just writing letters and things, I think, to the idea of people who were involved in, I don't know very much about what she actually did, but and it was voluntarily at home with a group of other people, and they were involved in this. And anyway, there's the idea that it doesn't matter if you're in prison, doesn't matter what you've done, that you, even if you're on death row and you've murdered someone, even if you're on death row, then we in the UK think that nobody should be on death row and they shouldn't have a capital offence, capital punishment. It's not for human beings to do that. And that is for a Christian. So I'm Buddhist now, so I would say it differently, but the same understanding, but different background. But for a Christian, it's because everything can be forgiven. So if God and Jesus can forgive absolutely everything, including murder, including the most atrocious crimes, then what are we to judge someone and say, you deserve to die? So that's the way Christians think about that. Many Christians think about that. And so everything can be forgiven. And then you have these things that are called unforgivable sins, where the idea there is not that there's anything that God would not forgive or Jesus would not forgive. Rather, the idea of an unforgivable sin is that you from your side totally reject Jesus' love and forgiveness. So in order to have an unforgivable sin in this sense, which is a Catholic idea, I'm not sure how much we have it in the other traditions. I think we have it in Anglicans as well, but it's very rare. I mean, if you're brought up as Christian, you're not going around going, have I done that unforgivable sin? I mean, it's just not something you can do. It's extremely difficult to do. Because, and if you think that you have done an unforgivable sin, then you haven't. Not if you're worried about it, not if you're concerned, and you're saying, have I committed an unforgivable sin? What can I do about it? In that case, you haven't, because you're looking for forgiveness. So if you're looking for forgiveness, you haven't committed an unforgivable sin. An unforgivable sin, if such things exist at all, and there's controversy amongst Christians whether there is such a thing, whether it's even possible. But if it is possible, then it's the idea that you recognise Jesus, and you recognise the love of Jesus, the love of God, and then you totally reject it, and say, acknowledging Jesus, the love of Jesus, the love of God, I totally reject it, and I'm going to have absolutely nothing to do with that, and I'm going to lead a life of sin and completely reject that, and that's my settled decision, and for the rest of my life I'm never going to have anything to do with all this loving kindness and stuff, and just do horrible things for the rest of my life, even having recognised Jesus and the love of God and the love of Jesus. So it's not common to do that, and there's this question amongst some Christians as to whether anyone has ever done that, or whether it's even possible. And so some branch of Christianity might say it's possible, others say it isn't. But either way, it's not something that you need to worry about. It's not like being a disobedient child, or you're saying, sort of using blaspheming, using swear words, or making jokes about Jesus or something, or some joke about miracles or something. None of that. So anyway, I hope this helps relieve you a little bit about some of the things. So I'm talking about this because I quite often get asked this by various people who are just getting a bit of a snarl, and if a bit of a snarl, a bit tangled up with what Christian ideas are about. There seems to be really rather minimal Christian education when I was young. But then, yeah, I don't think we did Sunday school. I'm not sure. Might have done at one point. But I was just brought up in a religious house, in a Christian household. My father was a missionary. My mother was as too, and the house was absolutely filled with theological books. And being a rather bookish person myself, then I read quite a lot of them, especially Teilhard de Chardin and some of the other theological books that my father used to have on the shelves. At one point, I wanted to learn Greek so I could read New Testament Greek, but sadly, I'm not very good at languages and didn't get very far with it. But yes, I was quite keen on theology when I was young, and when I was doing my philosophy degree, my second degree in philosophy, then I did a special thesis for my final year on Albert Schweitzer and his theological ideas as philosophy, his philosophical ideas in North Africa. He was a doctor, theologian thingy. Minister Albert Schweitzer. Let's just bring up Albert Schweitzer. My father was keen on him, and I was too. I've forgotten all about it now. But somewhere upstairs, I've got Albert Schweitzer. Yes, that chap, Albert Schweitzer. So yes, when he was a theologian, organist, writer, humanist, philosopher, and an all-round person. And then he was also he's also involved in medicine. At age 30, he became he answered the call of the Society of Evangelist Missions of Paris, which was looking for a physician. And anyway, he ended up in Africa, and he ended up in a really awful time there. He ended up in Gabon, now called Gabon in Africa. And his wife was an anaesthetist, and the conditions were really awful there. And anyway, he's an interesting chap, and if a record could be compiled of all that has happened between the white and the coloured races, to make a book containing numbers of pages which the reader would have to turn over unread because their contents would be too horrible. He was a medical missionary. So he said, for every person, and then he said, for every person who committed an atrocity in Jesus' name, someone must step in to help in Jesus' name. For every person who robbed, someone must bring a replacement. For everyone who cursed, someone must bless. And now when you speak about missions, let this be your message. We must make atonement for all the terrible crimes we read of in the newspapers. We must make atonement for all the still worse ones which we do not read about in the newspapers, crimes that are shrouded in the silence of the jungle night. So he had a sense of trying to make amends for the past. So, and this also is quite relevant to some people that I talk to, who they worry about the slavery in the United States, especially in the past. Of course, we had it in the UK as well. Then, instead of just kind of feeling feeling that, that sort of, oh, that's awful, huge sin, and it's not the way that Christians really think that this is something that I've done, but you can feel like Albert Schweitzer did, that this is something that has happened in the world in the past. It's not something that you've done, it's not your sin, but it's something that's happened in the world in the past, and somehow you can change that to a blessing and bring something positive into the world to kind of transform these awful things that happened in the past. So if you're worried about that, you can just think about just being kind to other people, and kind to other people of other ethnicities and people of other views. And I think nowadays, kind to people like the North Koreans. Your ordinary, average North Korean is just an ordinary person like me. They haven't murdered anyone. Even the people like Kim Jong-un, then you can think he must have done some awful things, but you can still, if God and Jesus can forgive Kim Jong-un, then it's just like with the people in death row. Then all of us can feel kindness and compassion and wanting all his wholesome wishes to be fulfilled. So he has wholesome wishes. Everyone has wholesome wishes. And the wholesome wishes of the two Koreas is to the united Korea. And that is actually what he wants. And that at some point in the future, North Korea and South Korea want to become one country, and to end all the divisions between the two. And they have absolutely no idea how they're going to do it. But if we can manage the peace between, if we can manage the beginning of a peace deal, so I do very much hope that Trump manages to get back in talks with Kim Jong-un, and then beginning of a peace deal. And it is absolutely right, and it's perfectly okay to feel kindness and compassion for people who do awful things, and to want their wholesome wishes to be fulfilled. So Kim Jong-un has wholesome wishes. He does care for his people. He is not a petty dictator that is just out for himself and trying to get as much money from his people as he can. People may complain about the amount of wealth, but it's a Confucian society where you have this building up to things at the top of the society, and respect. And so I'm not saying he's a good person, not at all, but that he's representative of society, and he is actually doing a lot. Somebody doesn't get into that position without having a lot of support from a fair large proportion of the society. And there are lots of ordinary little children like Mila in North Korea, and for them it's all they know. And for them they have the old stories of the North Korean people in the past. There's a white horse that was born from something that fell out of heaven, and then there was a young boy and a young girl born separately, and they became the first king and queen. And there's a great long story for North Korean saga, and they would all know about that, just like we know about Jesus. And so they have their views as well, their ideas as well. Anyway, I am somewhat rambling, but I just thought that I don't know how that happened. I just felt there was a connection there, the kind of that looking at nowadays and wanting to make amends for all the awful things that have happened in the past, then look at some of the awful things that are happening today. And North Korea, I think, is one of the places where we, right now, in the Western world, are causing harm to ordinary people by all the sanctions. And I personally think that we should not have the fuel sanctions on North Korea. It's just not right, because it is so harsh in what it does to the ordinary people of North Korea, and it's not their fault at all what their leaders are doing. And absolutely, they should be able to import oil and run tractors and have power stations and have electricity that is on all night instead of the electricity constantly going out because they just don't have enough power. It is just not right what we're doing to North Korea, in my view, the rest of the world. It's absolutely fine to do any sanctions you like on the sort of people who are sort of doing their wealth and their foreign wealth and stuff like that, of people, especially people who misuse their power or whatever. But not on fuel and oil and the only people of North Korea. It's not, and to help the two Koreas towards their common goal of reunification, which can only happen very slowly, but to start with the South Koreans being able to support industry in the north, and some cooperation between the two. The South Koreans are very keen to do that, but they need the kind of go-ahead of the United States, and they need a proper peace deal with North Korea and South Korea before they can do it, before they can even make a start on it. So anyway, I mean, but there are all sorts of ways in which you can be kind to people. You can do things that help people, and a blessing, and so on, and that heals everything. And asking for forgiveness and being kind, just being a decent person, and showing loving kindness to others. And that is what the Christian path is about. And it's not about, you can constantly prophesy Jesus if that's a positive thing for you. But if it makes you scared, then something's gone wrong, and that's not the proper Christian path. It's not right. Anyway, hope this helps some of you a bit. Just stop it.